What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Today I'm meeting with a guy that actually was the officer in the unit that I was in at the Buffalo Federal Detention Center. He was a cop in Little Rock, dangerous place. But we're going to talk a little bit today, and we'll get into, just the whole prison thing and the police force and all of that stuff. Tell the people who you are, brother.
My name is Jim Williams, and I'm originally from Arkansas, and I spent 26 years total in some type of law enforcement, either working in a jail, prison, or on the street. I was an actual street police officer for 10 years. The last 5 of those was as a burglary detective. I was on the gang task force, and I worked in the projects for 2.5 years prior to becoming a detective.
What was it like, being a cop in Little Rock?
Little Rock was really bad. It was in the early 90s. We were one of those cities. I actually lived in North Little Rock and was a police officer in North Little Rock. The river separates the two parts of the city. And we were one of those type of cities that didn't want to acknowledge that we had a gang problem. So it was always, it's no gangs, there's no gangs, there's no gangs. And then one day we woke up and there was a gang problem. So it was bad. We had in the part of North Little Rock, we had like 4 or 5 actual different sets of housing authority properties. And they were all pretty big, like 200 apartments here. And they were all throughout the city. The number one group in North Little Rock at the time when I was a police officer there was the Shorty folks. They hung with people from Chicago. They come out of Chicago. That was the predominant gang there. Then when we first started taking over the housing authority, the government decided that they wanted to put police officers in the housing authority. They took us from the police department and actually put us in there. We weren't like a part of the housing authority police. We were actual police officers in the projects. And they put 2 of us in each set of housing authority projects, so we had one team. And prior to us doing that, you couldn't drive a marked car in the projects on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You get shot up. It was crazy. It was wild.
So you're like right in the projects. You got an office in the projects. Are these dudes targeting you guys?
They did in the beginning. Well, here's what happened. The federal government gave us the authority as a housing authority police officer to put a list together. So if you're out in the projects and I approach you and you don't live in the projects and you're out there causing a problem, but not enough to get arrested, we put your name on a list and you were banned from the projects. So the next time you got caught in the projects, you went to jail. And there was no tickets. You went to jail.
So if you go to jail in the projects, how long are you in jail for?
It just depends on if you bond out or not, because it's criminal trespassing. You either bonded out or you had to stay till the next court date, and then the judge kicked you out. But so it was a tool. We went from having 0 names on it to having about probably 150 names on it in a couple of weeks. That's how it was bad.
Let me ask you this. There was a big gang problem there. People have seen the documentaries and all that on Little Rock. What was it like for you to come up on a murder scene?
Oh, it was crazy. I was working, as a police officer, you don't make any money. I was only making like $18,000 a year back in 91. And so I had to work a lot of off duty. So I would work my shift in the projects, and then I would pick up DWI patrol at night for overtime. We were doing this, I was out doing this one night, and it's just about time for me to get off. It usually went from 11 to like 2 in the morning, and it was like 1:30, and I'm driving in a not so good part of town, going back to the police department, and shots ring out. You can hear them. So I get on the radio and say, I got shots in the area, I'm gonna go over here. And when I pulled up, there was probably 100 people in the front yard of this house, and it was rocking. There was shots going everywhere. So when I pulled up, you can't, everybody thinks, well, you just sit back and wait. You can't do that. You're there. What are you going to, you gotta do something. So when I pulled up, there was a black female laying in the front yard shot. Well, because of the area that we were in, the ambulances don't come in there until everything's safe. So they're not going to just come in there and scoop and run, So I get on the radio and I call for more police units, and our dispatcher says, 10-4, we're going to send 2 more. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You need everybody that's here out here now. It's not good. And so it goes on, and here comes the cars. And my lieutenant pulls up, and he gets on the radio, and he tells the dispatcher, we need more units out here. And the dispatcher goes, well, I don't have any more to send. And they have this thing in the law enforcement community where you can request units from other police departments locally if you need help. So we had to call in other police departments. That's how bad it was. So, everybody, now everybody's kind of calmed down a little bit. There's no more shooting going on, but they're not stepping back from the girl who's been shot. And we couldn't, the ambulance wouldn't come in there. And I'm sitting there talking to I'm talking to some people, and they're like, Williams, get these, because most of these guys knew me because I worked in the projects and I was on the gang task force, so I had interactions with them all the time. And they're like, Williams, get this girl out of here, all this stuff. And I'm like, man, you guys got to get back. They're not coming in here.
Yeah.
So out of nowhere, it's like a movie, man. You ever watch the 10 Commandments and how Moses split the Red Sea? All this group of people just opened up like this. And this one dude walks through. And he was a guy that when I worked in the city jail, knew me from the jail. Yeah. And I knew him. So I called him by his name and I go, listen, if these people don't get back, this girl's going to die, man. This girl's dying right now. And he snapped his fingers. He did more than that, but it seemed like he just snapped his fingers. Everybody moved back. So we got the ambulances in there, scooped her up. She ended up being okay. And then once the ambulance left, the bottom fell out because we had all these police officers from all these different groups coming in here, and they were wearing some of them had like black uniforms on and all this stuff, and they're just walking up and just throwing people around, being way too aggressive for the situation. And so it got ugly. I ended up having a broken finger and a broken nose when it was all said and done, because we had to fight, or we ended up having to fight and putting people in jail.
Going to work there every day. I mean, did you ever think like, damn, I might lose my life today? Were you ever afraid?
Oh, in the projects, absolutely. When we first moved in, we had a 3-bedroom upstairs apartment, and it was right on the main drag, so everybody could just drive by there. And somebody's had the bright idea that it would be a good idea to put a big police badge on the door. We called that our target, because about the 3rd, 4th day we were in there, we were in the back of me and my partner were in the back of the apartment, and we heard this doom, 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 doom. So we knew somebody was driving down the road. And then they just started lighting up all the windows in there while we were in there. And you're like, yeah, I don't know if they pay me enough to do this job.
I know you also worked in a county jail, right? And
I did.
It was
a city jail.
City jail. Was that in Little Rock?
It was.
What was that like?
Gladiator school. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we called it fight night, because everybody that came in there, you're going to end up having to put your hands on them. And the problem with it with the whole thing is you couldn't get. I'm not saying the people that worked there weren't good, but they shouldn't be working in a jail. They were older, it was crazy. And you just, you'd walk in there on a Friday night. And of course it was people that were coming in drunk from the street, high, whatever. And
so hold on, let me stop, because you say fight night, that's the cops against the people getting arrested.
Yeah, it's fighting the people that are coming in.
Okay.
Because they don't want to go to the back.
Yeah.
And we didn't, dude, in that jail, it was a pretty big facility. I mean, it held like 300 and something people, and it was built like the same as the Buffalo Federal Detention Facility, the way the bubbles and stuff were.
Yeah.
It was built like that. It was a great facility. But we only had we had 300, 400 people in there, and we'd only have like 5 or 6 officers there for the whole shift. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
And you guys are in there just fighting with it.
It's crazy, man.
I want to ask you something, because you worked law enforcement, you worked on the street, you worked in detention centers, you worked in jails. I mean, actually, you were the housing officer at the jail that I was at. What is it like, with the cops, the correctional officers? Sometimes people come on, they just don't want to tell it how it is. Do you think there's a kind of a culture where the cops are like, these dudes are in jail, we hate these dudes, we don't give a shit about them? I mean, what is your perception on that?
Well, I'll tell you, having worked on both sides, being a cop and working in a facility as a corrections officer, not all of them, because you can't paint everybody with the same brush. I worked with some good dudes in jail. I worked with some dudes that would have your back no matter what, and when they were at work, I wasn't as nervous. That being said, you also have the majority of those people that are trying to be cops but can't be a cop. So they come into a jail where they have a captive audience, and then they become the police. That was never how I learned from a very good officer when I worked in the city jail before I ever became a cop. And this is what he told me. Williams, when you walk in here, you're the mayor. This is your city, you're the mayor. You have to have a city council. And the city council are the people in the pods that run those pods. You can think you run them, and you can think we run them, but at the end of the day, that's not how it works. He goes, how many times have you ever seen the mayor just come in and start screaming at somebody? That's not how this, you're only making your $8 an hour job that much harder. You can stay safe, and you say it all the time, and I've said it for 26 years, respect begets respect. I usually didn't say a whole lot. If you walked into my unit, I didn't say a whole lot to you, because I worked, even working in the city jail, and I was only there for about a year before I became a cop. Even working in the city jail, we had guys that come in from the state. Well, state people don't talk to the police. And if they do talk to the police, then there's a problem. I learned that from the very beginning. So when I moved up here and started working over in the facility, when the Marshall prisoners were still in there, if I had some dude hanging out at my desk that I didn't want hanging out at my desk, I'd just ask him, yo man, when you're locked up in the penitentiary, you hang out at the officer's desk? And he goes, oh no. I'm like, why are you doing it here? Yeah, what are you doing?
Sometimes you had dudes that would come up there and hang out at the cop's desk.
All day, man. And I'm like, and here's the thing, I'll talk to anybody. I don't know if you remember this, but when I was an officer out there, officers didn't come in and hang out with me. The lieutenants didn't come in and hang out with me. I was in there by myself most of the time. I had a detainee come up to me one time and go, Williams, the lieutenants don't like you in here, do they? And I go, why do you say that? He goes, because they don't never come in here. And I look at him, I'm like, you want lieutenants in here? And he goes, well, no. And I'm like, me either. I just want to do my thing.
You said something earlier to me before we were on camera about the criminal justice system. And, I know you've expressed to me that you grew up poor and that, there's a thin line. I want you to kind of elaborate on that while we're on this interview.
Okay.
What your perspective is.
Well, it's like this. I grew up, when I was 4 years old, my father was in a bad wreck and he broke his back, and we were poor, and we didn't have insurance or anything like that, but my dad was a vet, so he had to go through the VA. So he had to have an operation that was going to keep him in a hospital bed for almost a year. And we were poor, and we ended up moving into the projects because we couldn't afford to live anywhere else. And the projects back then were a whole lot different than they are now, but they were still the projects. And we were one of two white families in the entire place. Some of the best people I ever met in my life were there. My mom was a nurse that worked nights, and my dad was confined to a hospital bed, and my sister was 4 years older than me, and I was 4. So that tells you we weren't old enough to be taking care of my dad.
Yeah.
We had a neighbor that lived next door that would watch when my mom would have to go to work, would watch me and my sister and help take care of my dad. The ironic part about all of that, and we lived there for like 2 years, and so I never forgot that. And one of the older guys that used to live out in the projects back then was talking to me one day, and he goes, "Let me just tell you something." He goes, "It's not about the color of your skin. It's about how much money you got in your pocket." He goes, "This is not a racial thing. It's an economic thing." He goes, "Let me tell you why. You're white, and you live out here with me, and I don't look at you no different for being white because you live out here with me." You know, and I always try to hold on to that, because I'm going to tell you, my dad was Seminole Indian, and he was a racist. That's how he was raised. And I never could understand, rest his soul now, I never could understand how you could be a racist when you're a Native American. But that, neither here nor there. But my dad was my dad, and that's how, you know. So once I became a police officer and I started working in the projects, I felt like, I'll be honest with you, man, I felt like I was at home. You know, I wasn't black. I didn't act black. I was a white dude working in the projects. The thing that one of the first guys I worked with explained to me is like, look, you can't be scared and work out here. If you're scared, you're going to get hurt. You can't be scared. You got to be crazy to work out here. And the crazier you act, the better off it's going to be. And he goes, here's the craziest thing you can do as a white officer working in the projects. Just walk around. For you to just be walking around in here shows them you're crazy. You know? But it was, you know, and I love working in the projects. I had some older ladies there I worked on Sunday for a reason, because every Sunday I would have a plate of fried chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy. They loved us. The rules I went by out there, and I know a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy and I'm lying and all that stuff, but I really don't give a shit. I know the rules I went by was this: I don't need no snitches. I don't need you to snitch. My job is to work in the projects. If you have to tell me what's going on where I work, I'm not doing my job. And I just was never one of those dudes. I just, you know, I used to get in trouble for telling on my sister, and you get your butt spanked enough, you stop telling, right? And I always was raised that way. So to me, if someone would come up and try to give me information, you know, I would look at them like, why are you telling me this? Why are you putting yourself in that position? You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't need that.
You ever get the gangsters, the dudes ever, the gangsters in the projects ever try to tell on people? Guys that,
man. Listen, we had this dude, he was straight out of LA. I'm rolling through the projects one day. We had rules in the projects. Kind of like being in a jail. When you see me, pull your pants up, because they had rules. You can't be sagging. You can't be having your hat turned to the side. You get talked to.
These were the rules of the projects.
Oh yeah, it's crazy, bro. So my whole thing was this: look, you live out here. I'm not going to. These are kids, man. I'm not going to be running around here policing them on their pants and all that stuff. I tell them, listen. You see me, pull your pants up. Simple as that. If you do that, I'll never bother you. I'll let you live and let live. Just don't make me look stupid out here. So, and I had this other little thing I would do. I would walk. You know, the projects are not that big, but there's a lot of apartments, but it's not a lot. I stayed on my feet, man.
Yeah.
So I just walk around. And if I seen you on the street, one day I might just give you that. I ain't always going to talk to you. I know you don't want to talk to the police, and I really don't want to talk to nobody either. I just want to walk, right? I'd give you one of them little head nods. Next day, I give you a head nod. Third day, I go, you got anything in your pockets? I'm just trying to keep it real. Yeah. You know, dude, and I'm trying to teach these young dudes out there, because most of the kids I dealt with out there weren't going to jail. They were going to juvenile. given a ticket and sent to mama, right?
Yeah.
Unless they did something really bad. So I would try to teach them some stuff, man. And I would go, it's hard, man, because I look at these kids. First of all, they got nothing. Man, these people, you ain't ever been to Arkansas. It's abject poverty in these projects.
Yeah.
They got nothing, bro. And you're riding around, and so I would hook them up like that sometimes. I would never, I'd say, you got anything in your pockets? And they look at me, and I go, see, you never know what I'm going to check. I wouldn't check. I just keep walking.
You ever arrest someone down there for a serious crime that you knew they were going to get some serious time and just kind of felt bad? Poor kid, maybe it's a murder charge. Was there anybody that ever stayed in your mind?
In the beginning, no, because the laws were a little bit different when I first started. But, like for example, you catch somebody, like my big thing is don't run from me. I work in the projects, I know who's out there.
Yeah.
And I work on the gang task force, so I know who most of the players are out there. If you run from me, that's disrespectful. First of all, I'm not going to chase you because I'm not stupid, and I'm not going to catch you.
Yeah.
Secondly, I know your face. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the prosecutor, and I'm going to get a warrant for your arrest for fleeing. And then I'm going to catch you when you ain't doing something wrong, and I'm going to walk up to you, and I'm going to place you under arrest and take you to jail. That's the kind of thing we do. It's a community. You can't go in there. You cannot go in there as a project police thinking you're working at Attica State Prison.
Yeah.
You got to go. These people live out here. You got to really go with the flow sometimes. We would catch dudes, right? Dude would have, I don't know, 5 or 6 rocks in his pocket, but they're all individually bagged up, dude. And you notice dude's getting ready to, and he have a gun. That's not good. That's not good. And you try to tell these dudes, man, the laws have changed, man. You can't do this no more. You're going to get 20. I can remember when I first started working in the jail, a dude coming back from court that got 10 years would be tore up. I got 10 years, right? Fast forward, I hear dudes coming back from like where you were at, from federal court with 20 years, happy that they got 20 instead of 40.
Sad.
It's crazy, man. That whole thing is out of control, man. Out of control.
I want to take you there. Like I said, you were the correctional officer in my unit at the Buffalo Federal Detention Center. What was it like for you, being there? Do you remember your first day? How was your first day there?
At the detention facility?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I had already been a cop for a while and then came back. Then I moved up here. And when I first went to work out there, I was quiet. I don't know. Here's the other thing. I don't know if you can tell, but I have a Southern accent.
We can tell.
I'm in Western New York. That don't always work out well. You know what I'm saying? So I wasn't like one of the boys when I went to work at the facility. The only thing that I had going for me is I had prior experience. Plus I was a vet. The great thing about the Buffalo Federal Detention Facility back when I first started was the majority of the people they hired were veterans.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. Not always the best. That don't mean they're going to be great corrections officers or officers. It just means that at some point they had some type of discipline in order to get an honorable discharge. So that was a good thing. But I didn't really kick it with nobody out there. I'm from a different part of the world. I grew up different, and they automatically thought because I was from Arkansas and had a Southern accent that I was racist. Dude, I'm the least racist person you'll ever meet. And I ain't saying that to sound, you know what I'm saying? That's a fact, right? And it's like, they would say stuff in front of me, bro, and I'm like, I can't believe you're saying that in front of me. You don't even know me, man. I could be working undercover out here. You don't even know me.
Do you feel like the majority of them cats that worked there were racist?
I wouldn't say the majority. There was a few. There's a few everywhere. But see, the difference is like a lot of people say, well, you're from the South and it's really racist down there. It's a different thing down there. People, if they're racist, they're in your face racist. It's not like closet racism. Up here, it's closet, bro.
Yeah.
They'll be smiling all in your face 1 second and then calling you all kinds of names when you turn around and walk away. And I just wasn't raised that way. My dad, yes, he was a racist, no doubt about it. But my dad was a good man to the point where he always taught me that the only thing you have in life is your name. And if you don't stand up for your name, you got nothing. So when I walked into places and I would talk to guys like you, when I first met you, the thing that really clicked with me is, dude, you're me. I could have been you. If I'd have made a couple of more decisions, I could have been where you're at.
Yeah.
Right? And I always knew when I first met you that you were a smart dude. And I'm like, this dude's too smart to be in here. And then, it's like you meet guys like that. You meet guys that, I don't condone breaking the law. I don't. I have trouble with some of the laws, but I don't condone breaking it. I mean, you gotta keep it real, But that being said, I don't think that if me and you go to court for the same thing, and my dad's a physician and can afford a really good lawyer, and you have to go with a public defender, that we go in there and you get 40 years and I get 10. Yeah. That's where the system is messed up. Goes back to what I said before. Everybody can sit around and say, oh, it's racial this and it's racial that. And there's a lot of that, bro, and I don't discount none of that. But bottom line, it's economical. It's all economics. It's how much money you got in the bank. Because that's how these prisons make their money. That's how, all these important titles that the criminal justice system has now. The war on drugs. How long have we been fighting a war on drugs? Yeah. You want to fight a war on drugs, you know what you do? Bring the military and shut it all down in one fell swoop.
That's it.
But you can't do it. The reason you can't do it is because the people that are making the money ain't going to let you do that. It ain't us. It ain't people like you that spent 20-something years in prison. It ain't them. It's like, I was asked, we were in a public meeting one time when I worked in the projects. I started a mentoring program in the projects because there were no fathers in the projects that I worked in. And I tried to get weekend basketball. We had local churches everywhere. So I went to every one of the local churches as a white police officer and sat down in these congregations, sat through their church, and had a meeting with their pastor and says, look, this is what I want to do. You got to understand, I'm a police officer. I need people from the community to step up and help me. Oh, yeah, we'll do that. Okay, well, when can I put you down? Friday, Saturday, or Sunday to come out there and play some basketball? Oh, we're not coming to the projects. Bro, they don't want nothing to do with it.
It's crazy.
Those
are the kids, man. Those are the kids without a father that end up in prison. Those are the guys that end up in federal prison with 20, 30, 40 years for selling a half ounce of crack and a pistol. I'm going to take you back to the Federal Detention Center. I did a video the other day, and I talked about the kid that bit me in the face, and I told people, hey, look, I may very well bring the officer on that was, the unit officer that day. Do you remember that day?
I remember it very well. It was funny because there was a little dude from Trinidad that was in there. We used to call him Trini, and he was a little bitty guy. And this dude from Buffalo, supposedly he was some type of blood leader or something, member of the Bloods. He was a big dude. He wasn't no little cat. He was, and he loved to be on that pull-up bar in the back. But he also loved to extort people like Trini for food. And I watched you walk by Trini's cell, and you stopped, and you said something to him. And I guess he told you what happened. And then I seen you make a beeline, and I'm like, oh boy, this is not going to be good. And the dude was in the back by the pull-up bar, the pull-up station, and you said you hit him and he went up against the wall. Let me just say this: where that pull-up bar was 20 feet from the wall. You hit that dude so hard that he flew across the floor and hit the wall and almost got knocked out.
That's why. That's what when I hit him and he hit his head, that stopped me from hitting him, and that's when he grabbed me and he was biting me in the face.
And then of course the cavalry shows up and the dude's biting your face, and you're telling I'm even telling him, yo, he's biting his face, right? And so they go to pull you off, and when they pull you off, I guess the dude finally let go of your face, and then you start wearing him out again.
I went nuts after he let go of my face. I did. I think that, someone put him, was it Lund that put him, someone put him in a sleeper hold. That's how he let go of my face.
Right.
Because he wasn't letting go.
No.
And I was trying to keep him close to me so that he couldn't, if they pulled us apart.
Right.
And I'm trying to, tell them too, hey, don't pull the dude because he's biting me in the face. Right. And they're still trying to separate us.
The best dude you could have had in that position was the guy who was there, because he was no joke, and he can handle his business when it comes to stuff like that. The problem with that is you work in a place, and the training that you receive when you go in there, the one thing that they don't do enough of in the prison system is they don't teach people how to talk to inmates or detainees or whatever you want to call them. They don't teach you how to have a conversation. They don't teach you how to de-escalate stuff. Because here's the problem. They always want to talk about this thing called the use of force continuum. If I walk into your cell and I have spray, and at the Buffalo Federal, we didn't use spray. We didn't even have spray out there. So when you walked in to a cell, you had nothing. There was no force continuum. You went from your presence, verbal commands, to having to go hands-on with someone. I worked in other places, like in Louisiana, where they would go straight to the spray. The problem with going straight to the spray is this. You get around some real dudes, the spray don't affect them. You don't went to the top of your force continuum. You got nothing else. What are you going to go to now? You done spray 5 or 6 dudes that ain't responding. You got nothing above that. We didn't have all the guns that shot all. We didn't have all that stuff. So the problem with it is when you get into a place like this, the training is kind of secondary. You don't really have like an academy. These guards don't go through no academy up here. Yeah. They go through 2 weeks of training. Now, the training is a lot better now than it was when I first came through. And it's just they don't teach people how to communicate, respect. They don't teach not that as an officer I need to know about your gang, but you should at least teach a gang class. Yeah. One of the greatest classes I ever had is when I was on the street. I went to a survival Spanish course where you went and the instructors were Spanish-speaking officers, and they taught you survival street Spanish. So when someone's talking to you about certain things, you can understand. Great class. Great class.
Let me ask you this, right? I've been in prison. I spent 18 years of my life there. I used to feel like sometimes there were cops where they'd have their own little crew, and they'd be like, yo, we're targeting this cat today. We don't like this cat. You ever been around cops who are like, yo, today we're going to go get Johnson. I hate that dude. You ever seen that type of stuff in that environment?
When I worked out here, there was, I'm not saying that didn't happen. It didn't happen around me. As a unit officer, I won't let that happen. Yeah. If you're an officer and I'm the unit officer and I'm running my unit, you ain't coming to my unit and messing stuff up. I'll be the first one to tell you at the door, no, we ain't doing that. You ain't coming in here with that mess. You go down somewhere and do that.
You ever have to tell an officer that?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
And do they get pissed? Or they call you an inmate lover? I mean, how's that work?
Hug a thug. You don't hug a thug. No, I'm just smart. Yeah. Here's the thing. It's all about it. It's like we were talking about earlier, that little detainee handbook that you got. The problem with that book is, like I said, some people want to do the first 3 rules. Some people want to enforce the next 4 rules, and they live by that book. And it's like when I was a cop, right? If I stopped you, and believe you me, the way the laws are, if I stopped you, I could write you about 100 tickets. I could find 100 things wrong with your car that you don't even know is wrong with your car, according to that AR 300, which is the regulation in Arkansas for traffic. But you could run a stop sign right in front of me, but I have the discretion or not whether to write you a ticket. Yeah. It's called discretion, right? Can I write you a ticket? Sure. Do I have to write you a ticket? No. Same way working in a facility. I have the discretion of writing a ticket. 15 years, only time I ever wrote a ticket in my corrections life, even as a supervisor, is when there was a fight. I had no choice. That don't mean I let you get away with stuff. If you did something, I would come to you and go, yo, man, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You got to get rid of that.
You were the type of cop that everybody respected because, like I say, men respect men.
Right.
You were consistent. If you had something coming, you got it. You weren't the type of dude that went out of your way to, cause trouble or like send your unit into an uproar. But you do have cops like that.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And it was worse in Louisiana when I went to work down for the private prison.
We're going to get there in a second. I want to ask you this. Eventually, you become a lieutenant at the jail that I was at.
I did.
Staff members, you ever have to get involved in, disagreements between staff members?
Oh, sure. I mean, my thing was as a lieutenant. Now, see, as a officer, I could do my own thing.
Yeah.
Me being safe wasn't dependent on anybody else but me. When I walked into the prison, I looked out for me first and foremost. And I knew because of my training, I'm not no bad dude at all. I'm not a fighter at all. But I have enough of skills to survive for me.
Yeah.
But when I became a supervisor, it wasn't just me that I had to deal with now. Now I have no choice but to deal with officers. Now, I had to deal with officers that I didn't like. Never got along with them. But I'm this way. I'm not sometiming. I'm the same way every day. If I'm your boss or I'm your supervisor, I'm going to treat you like I treat everybody else. No one's getting any special treatment from me. None of that. Don't do stupid stuff and you won't have to. I was the type of guy that the less you talk to me, the better off you were.
Yeah.
We don't have to be buddies. I'm not going to come in your unit and hang out. Because here's the thing. Some of the unit officers say, Williams, when you do rounds, Lieutenant, when you do rounds, you don't stay in here at all. Do you want me in here? I never wanted a supervisor in my unit.
Yeah.
Because it made stuff uneasy, man.
It's like your boss is watching.
Correct. And I wasn't that dude. I would come in, sign the book, look around. You need anything? Nope, go. If detainees will walk up to me, I go, no, you need to talk to your unit officer. My job as a lieutenant was not to take care of the inmates. It was to take care of the officers. To a point, I still had to help the inmates too. No, I did, but that wasn't my number one priority.
Eventually, you leave there, you go to Louisiana. What's the jails like there? You go to a private prison in Louisiana, right?
I went to a private prison in Louisiana, and it was by far the worst experience of my life. I've seen a lot of stuff. I used to work in the projects. I wasn't as concerned about the projects as I was that jail. It was crazy. That's the craziest thing I ever seen in my life, man. They try to run it like a state prison, but they don't have enough guards to do it.
Yeah. And
you can't do it. And even though it was still a detention facility, but bro, there was 1,700 bodies on there. 1,700.
What was the violence like there?
Crazy. Every day. Now, I will say this. I ain't going to sit up in here and act like everybody's getting stabbed up all the time. People did get stabbed up in there.
Yeah.
The one thing that there wasn't a lot of that surprised me is there wasn't a lot of inmate on staff assault there. They didn't, and part of the reason is there wasn't enough staff there to assault. Bro, I'd walk in at 5:30 in the afternoon, and we got, like I said, it's 1,700 beds in this place. And this place would be off the chains, bro. They wouldn't wreck everybody together. So each dorm would do rec at a different time.
Yeah.
Well, if a fight broke off in this yard or broke out, then these people would have to go in, and then you couldn't take these people out to rec. So you would always have someone missing rec because there wasn't enough hours in the day. Dude, these dudes would go, we're not locking in. And we had this one situation. This is funny, actually. It wasn't funny. I'm glad people didn't get hurt. But they did something. They come up with a new rule, right? And it was an all Hispanic dorm. It was all broken down into race, gangs, and stuff there. Yeah. It wasn't like it over here where you went where they told you. You went wherever, right? So they get into it in this unit, and they are tearing shit up, bro. They are throwing garbage cans, and they're doing all this stuff. So I I told all officers one day before shift, I said, look, there ain't no heroes here. If that shit pops off, you got the keys to the door. Step out the door and lock the door. Or you can't take on, there's 97 people in these dorms. I'm like, you can't beat 97 people. So step out the door.
Yeah.
Be a hero. You know, you don't make enough money to be that big of a hero. They go, what would you do? Step out the door? I'm not staying in there. Are you crazy? So anyway, they're going off in there, man. So they are not locking in. They're burning shit. They got fires in there. So, you know, we down south, man. People down in Louisiana, that's a different breed down there. They go get a gas machine for mosquitoes, and they put tear gas in that bitch. And they crank it up and put it in the slot, and they just start blasting it in there. You know, everybody's tough. They got their things on. Bro, there was so... And here's the thing. The officers, you don't have masks. You getting gassed just like everybody else, right?
Yeah.
So it got so thick in there you couldn't see this far in front of your face. They're piled up in front of the door. We're pulling them out one at a time.
How long did you work down there?
About a year and a half. I had enough. I was done with the whole prison thing. I didn't like the whole private prison situation, and I did not like Louisiana. And that place was dangerous, man. That's the most dangerous situation. Because like I said, at night, it's me and two sergeants. That's it. And then there's no other supervisors there. And we're responsible for everybody.
So were there times you went to work like, damn, man, I'm a little bit nervous?
Ooh, I was nervous Here's when I knew when it was time to be nervous. We had a CERT team. They had a CERT team. They didn't have like an individual CERT team, which that's all you did, which they should have. They pull officers. So here's the deal. I had a good shift, and I had a lot of good officers on my shift, right? Guess what? They were all on the CERT team. So if they had to go and do a CERT thing at, let's say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, well, they ain't coming. They're supposed to work at 5:30. They ain't coming. They're done. They're done for the day. They go home. Bro, I'd walk in. I'd be 7 officers short. 7. It was crazy. So I went to, I'm new there too at the time. I was a new lieutenant. Because up here, somebody called off, somebody was holding over. It was 1 for 1. Because up here, if you had an open post, you got fined for that. Because you're working straight for ICE, right?
Yeah.
Down there, bro. I look at my captain and go, sir, can I get some bodies? Oh, I don't have any.
Did you put in a 2-week notice, or did you just say, I'm just done?
Dude, I just smoked out of there, bro. I'm like, I'm done. Here's what happened.
Let me ask you this. Did you leave work, or did you just
here's
not
what
go
happened.
one day?
Here's what happened. We had an incident that took place on the night previous. The day I'm going into work, my truck breaks down. I call them on the phone, and I go, look, my truck's broke down. I'm like 50. I live 40 minutes from where I work. And I go, my shit's broke down. I can't get there. You got to be here. I can't get there. They go, well, you need to come in because we need to talk about a use of force that happened last night. There was no use of force, right?
Yeah.
And they're mad at me because I'm not coming to work. So that means one of the higher-ups have to stay and cover my position. So they're mad. And he starts talking to me all crazy on the phone. I mean, I don't know, at that point, I was 52, 53 years old. You can't talk to me crazy like that. I'm a grown man.
Yeah.
And you ain't paying me enough money. And I'm not, no, you ain't gonna talk to me. I'm like, who? I asked him on the phone, who are you talking to? And he goes, well, I'm talking to you. I'm like, well, you can't talk to me like that. Well, you need to get into work as soon as you can. I just went, click.
And that was it.
That's it, bro. I don't need to do nothing.
Did they ever call you like, hey, where are you? That was it.
That was it.
And then you walked away from corrections, walked away from law enforcement.
Done, bro.
So, I appreciate you, doing the interview, right? It's different for me to go from being in a jail with you, you're the correctional officer, to me, sitting at your house.
Right.
I'm out here, at your house, and, we're having a conversation.
Right.
And, I know when I was going through what I was going through, me and you had talked a lot, and I came back and they wanted to put me on suicide watch, and I was hurt inside. Sentenced to 40 years. I'm devastated. This isn't, I'm doing bad. And I was telling you all the legal issues, and we talked, and some people like, well, you're not supposed to talk to the cops. You know what? You were the one person that showed me compassion in prison, man, and I never forgot you. And obviously, you never forgot me.
Nope. And the funny thing about that is too, and this is something you don't know about me. When I stopped being a cop, I moved to Colorado, and I got a degree in theology. I became a pastor. That's how I got to New York, right? And one of the things that I learned, I've always been a Christian, and one of the things that I learned going through the theological training and stuff and being involved in a religion is there's systems everywhere. Even in religion, and I'm not going to get into this too deep, there's systems in there. But the one thing that I try to live my life like, this is what I use. God, through his infinite grace, gave me his son so that I could be forgiven of my sins, past, present, future. Anything I've ever thought about doing, it's forgiven. And if I can give that same grace, and my only responsibility is to love people. Now, how can I love someone? How can I love someone if I can't? You already been through the system, bro. You already did. To me, you're free and clear. I don't look at you no different. No different. That's the problem. You want to send people on these 40-year bids. They end up getting out in 20 years because the laws are whack. And then when they come back, you still want to treat them like how are you going to send someone home and he can't get a job? Yeah, can't get. So when you walk it, this is just me being stupid, I guess. But if you go to prison and you have a felony and you do 20 years on that felony, when your 20 years is up and that felony is paid for, that felony should be gone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they ain't going to do that because then they can't stack and they can't do all this other stuff. I get it, man. But my whole thing is I always try to look at everybody. I'm 56 years old. I'm done playing the game. I was never super cop. I was never a bad dude. I never, I'm not going to say I didn't do my dirt back when I was young. Everybody does, right? But that being said, the one thing that I am in control of now is who I forgive and who I don't.
Yeah.
And that's all I can do, bro. I can't do no more than that.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate you doing the interview.
Absolutely.
It was good to connect with you. What was it like? I want to ask you this before we go. What was it? I mean, you seen me on like someone else's show or something.
Right. I seen you on Ian Beck's show.
And what'd you say? Were you like, holy
dude, I walked out here where we're at right now.
Yeah.
I come out here on Saturday and I watch YouTube constantly, right? And I caught a couple of other prison shows.
Yeah.
And I was watching them, but I look up, I come out here in my garage and I'm listening, but I ain't watching. And then I happen to look up and I see, there you are. And I'm like, no, that ain't him. And then so I'm waiting because it doesn't have your name on it.
Yeah.
Right? So I click the button to see where it's at and it comes back up, Chad Marks. I'm like, oh, no. I immediately emailed you.
Well, listen, man, again, I appreciate you, man.
You got it, bro.
Tell everybody, Blood on the Razor Wire TV, if you like what we do, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Hope you like this video. With respect, until tomorrow, we're out of here.